Let's talk about using reasoning in your essays. It's arguably the most challenging skill that you need to do in your essay, but it's also the most important. Reasoning is where you explain things in your own words. You help us understand what the evidence that you used means and how it proves your point. In many ways, it is the opposite of a mic drop. In a mic drop, you put your evidence out there as if it speaks for itself and you walk away. We don't want you to do that in your essay. We want you to stick around and use your words to help us get inside your brain and understand how things connect. You pretend your audience has no idea what to think, and you have to clearly show them the way. You help them understand how things connect to each other. Let's look at some examples from student papers. In one paper, a student was trying to prove that museums must completely return stolen artifacts. The evidence they used was this video explains that the British took photos of artifacts and labeled them as loot. This would be a terrible place to do a mic drop because I'm not sure whatsoever how taking photos of artifacts and calling them loot means we should return them. You probably have a really good idea in your brain, but I need you to explain it for me. How does just taking photos of something and calling them loot show I need to return them? That's where reasoning comes in. Here's something you might say. Labeling the items as loot or stolen goods is clear evidence that the British knew what they were doing was wrong. They should return the stolen items. This is excellent reasoning because you're putting things in your own words and explaining how these two ideas connect. Here's another example. In this essay, a student was trying to prove that artifacts must be returned to their original country. The evidence they put in was, in 2019, federal agents seized the Gilgamesh tablet from the Museum of the Bible in Washington and returned it to its home in Iraq. So, how is it that returning a tablet to the original home in Iraq proves that we have to return artifacts to their original country? This is an example of a time that an artifact was returned, but how does it prove our overall point that all artifacts should be returned to their original country? That's where you use your reasoning to help us understand what you're thinking. Here's what the student wrote. This shows that even after artifacts get looted from other countries, it's important to return it to the country that rightfully owns it. This is a really good example of reasoning, but I want to show you how to make it just a little bit better. Instead, you could try, this shows an example of an artifact being returned legally to make things right. If they can do this for one artifact, they should consider this process for other disputed artifacts too. This is taking your reasoning a step further and showing how this can apply to lots of artifacts, not just this one example, helping us understand why all artifacts could and should be returned to their original country. Let's look at one more example. This student is trying to prove again that museums should give back stolen artifacts. Here's the evidence they used. In the video Rescued or Seized, it states that the Parthenon marble statues were taken from Greece by Britain. Now the statues are in two parts of the world. This would be a terrible place to stop writing your essay because all you've said is there's a statue that is in two different places. How does that prove we should give artifacts back? I'm really confused. The reasoning they wrote is this shows that the museum should give back the sculptures. I don't get it. I'm not sure how this proves anything. I think that they should have to explain a little bit more in their own words. I'm stumped here. What do you think would be a good rewrite? Should they explain how statues belong together and that they need to be all in one place to make sense? That it's not sensible to have them in two different places? Where does reasoning go in your paper exactly? Well, let's look at these three colors here to try to explain. The blue is their reason for this paragraph, and the yellow is their evidence. The pink is where they're using reasoning to help explain their evidence. you can see they've gone evidence, reasoning, evidence, reasoning. That's one way to do it. Here's another way. This writer used a lot of evidence and then explained it all in their reasoning in the pink all at the end. So you could have all your evidence and all your reasoning. And sometimes there's a different portion of each. This one has a lot of evidence, but they didn't really need much reasoning to help explain this one. It could be flipped too, a little bit of evidence with a lot of reasoning to explain it. So there's lots of different ratios of evidence to reasoning and places to put it in a paragraph. Your teachers have given you lots of sentence stems to help use your reasoning and get them started. Phrases like this shows, this reveals. The author's point is that you have a lot of great options to get you going.